When I started teaching yoga, I started to see a lot of problems, specifically around people had to do poses that their bodies couldn't accommodate.
Talked about myofascial release on the show. We've had a lot of guests that have come on, and most people are talking about hard implements. But when we were using that, it just did so much. And you don't expect that with a soft implement.
Soft is supreme.
I thought you were going to say it's a new hard. I was like, hey, that's good.
And what you can see with hard tools is that the hard tools initiate in most bodies a muscle bracing response. That's one of the gifts that a soft tool can do, is that you can just get in there right away. We talk about time under tension when you're under a bar. Well, I talk about time under intention. The emotions show up when you let go. Off my teeth.
It's okay. I'm sure it'll be
Put it right into the mic.
Yeah.
People will love
We'll
it.
just do ASMR. That was good.
Oh God, that sounds it's so vivid. It's so close. I feel like you're inside of my ear.
Right? It's a little too much. And let's start it over.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yes.
So you had, you were bulimic for how many years?
Well, this is a good place to start. So I have all this almond skins all over my teeth right now. And the reason I'm experiencing it is because I have a lot of gum recession. So right before we rolled, they were like, oh, is that from brushing too hard? And yeah, I definitely brush with vigor. Sorry, Nsima, easy. I mean, I really want to get those teeth clean. You know what I'm saying? Like, I love vigorous brushing.
My girlfriend does the same. I'm like, calm down. She's like, it's just...
No, I know. The gums are a very specialized muscle.
Little circles.
Yes. And did you guys know that you're supposed to actually, you don't necessarily, it's not about brushing the teeth. You're supposed to brush up against the root. So you're supposed
the gums, yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't know that. And this brings me to the answer to your question about, so the recession is probably part from vigorous brushing and then part from being bulimic as a teen. One of my best friends in the world is a pastry chef, a top pastry chef. She's won 3 James Beard Awards, and she happens to be married to a dentist. Wow. And we're very proud because we took them on their first date. But I decided to swap dentists. I was like, I'm going to start going to see her husband, of course, because that's family. So the first time I sat in his chair, Ed looked at my teeth and read them like tea leaves. He's like a tooth intuitive. And he looks at my teeth and he goes, oh, you have acid reflux. And it's one of those moments where I just felt boom, boom, boom. This gap of, somebody saw me. He saw right through into my teeth and knew the cause of the recession was from bile. And the kind thing to say is acid reflux, not, oh, do you have a mental health issue called bulimia? Or did you? And so I looked at him, I said, oh no, I was bulimic when I was a teen from age 16 to 20. And it was just shit. I had no idea that in my 40s, I was going to have a consequence like that. But there's lots of consequences that follow your whole life with when mental health is something that is very tenuous.
What do you think was the start of that?
Oh, the start of throwing up?
Yeah.
Well, I got the idea. Let's say I got the idea by watching a TV show in the 70s. So I think you and I are Gen Xers, firmly in the Gen X. And there was a show called, I think it was 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With Barbara Walters?
And Hugh Downs.
Okay.
And they did a show
I think it's still on the air, right?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't watch TV anymore. It was a great show. It might have been 2020 or it might have been some other News Digest show like that. But they had a show that featured Jane Fonda. And Jane Fonda on this show came out and talked about bulimia, that she had been living with bulimia for many years. And she was talking about this condition that she had where she ate and then she would throw up. And I mean, it was a really good segment, and it was talking about it as a mental health condition. And, was it because you wanted to look thin? And yes, she wanted to look thin, and it was the fitness industry and the Jane Fonda workout. And it was around all of this time. But that was the first time I learned about it. And somehow it went into my little tween brain, and my tween brain was probably like, oh, that'll be a good idea to use someday when I eat too much of something. I can just throw it up. So that idea came in. And then when I was 16, I ate a pan of brownies. I made a pan of brownies for my family, and I made them at night. And I was worried that the sugar was going to keep me up. So I threw up the brownies, and I didn't successfully throw them up. But it's interesting. I was more worried about my sleep than about spiraling out of control for the next 4 years into an eating disorder, because I'm going to protect my sleep at all costs, and we can talk about that on this podcast too. But that was the first moment when I did that, and then it followed me for the next 4 years.
Did you, at the time, were you like overweight at all, or were like what
I was not overweight as a teen. I was overweight as a kid. So I was the chubby kid. I was the shortest kid. I was the youngest kid. So I had really, I was very smart. And back in those days, if you were too smart for a teacher, they would just kick you up into the next grade. And so I was the youngest kid in the class. I skipped first grade. And I think that probably on a social emotional level, I was trying to keep up with kids who were far ahead of me emotionally or psychologically. But I was really chubby, and I wasn't interested in my body, and I wasn't interested in athletics or anything. And so I was like 100 pounds and 4'9" in sixth grade with the only girl with glasses. Got picked last, got picked on, got teased. I was that girl. And that was, it ended because I started not eating. So my first taste of the mental health problem that was my eating disorders was anorexia. So I started to starve myself, and I lost about 35 pounds. And that coupled with, at the same time, getting into my body, because my mom had brought home at the same time, ironically, the Jane Fonda workout and the Raquel Welch yoga video. So we lived off the grid in a solar home in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Wow. So there wasn't a lot to do but walk the dogs, read, and if you wanted to watch a show, it was on beta. So she brought home these videos, and I started doing them with her, and then she stopped doing them, but then I became obsessed. And that took me through, a decade of challenges to figure out a path out of anorexia and bulimia. And a lot of the book that I wrote, Body by Breath, a lot of the work that I did way back then, and that has followed me for these past 20 years, the ripple effect of the body-based therapy that I guess I MacGyvered for myself has shown up in application for all sorts of other people and other conditions, not just an eating disorder.
Physical exercise may have saved your life to some extent.
Yes, because I could have become an alcoholic or a drug addict very easily. I have that addictive, obsessive, kind of compulsive, disciplined vibe. And so I think about that all the time. Yeah, it could have gone in a very different direction. I became addicted to something that actually had the potential to create tremendous healing.
Did you communicate with your parents at all about, probably not, I'm assuming, but how did you get past bulimia?
I hid the anorexia with big clothes. I kind of hid underneath big clothes. I can see pictures from that time, and I'm wearing it was like the early 80s, so big baggy sweaters and big baggy, Madonna,
Yeah, they're back in.
That's come back.
Yeah. Right. And I do remember when I was in college and I was really struggling because I knew one of my girlfriends was going into the hospital. She was emaciated. I was in the dance department. We were a mess. All the girls I hung out with, it was one after the other, had just weird eating habits. And it's very common in the dance department at different, maybe hopefully not now, but certainly back then. And I know that it's a big problem now. In general, in teen bodies, especially female teen bodies. This is one of the leading causes of death of all mental illnesses. Eating disorders are the number one cause of death. If one is to perish from a mental health disorder, it's eating disorder. So they're deadly.
Yeah.
And one of my best friends, she went into the hospital to get treatment. And some of my other friends were like, you need to get treatment too. And I was not in denial. I just didn't think that was, of course, when you're digging your heels into your addiction, you're like, that's not going to work for me. I'm going to take it into my own hands. But I did tell my parents, and I remember my mother not knowing how to deal. When I finally told her that I was bulimic, she couldn't face it. And then I told my dad, and my dad said, it's just a phase you're going through. So when I did cry for help, I didn't get the help I needed, but I was seeing a therapist through the college. Like you get a few sessions as part of being in the student medical, thing.
Did your friends open up to you at that time too and say, hey, I'm kind of dealing with the same thing? Like,
we just knew. All of us knew who had, strange eating patterns or, we all just knew. But the talk therapy I did was not moving the needle, and I couldn't stop throwing up. Like I just couldn't stop the behavior. And when you go into hospital, they make you stop the behavior. They have so many really great and necessary tactics to do that. And I don't think my parents thought it was urgent enough. Like when when I confessed to them, I didn't get the response of let's help you, which is really what I wanted. That's why I told them I wanted the help. But what ended up helping me was I told a yoga teacher. I was also doing work study outside of school at a massage studio and at a yoga studio. Like I was looking for help by going into the healing arts while I was in school full time and working and doing all the stuff. But I was trying to figure out how to not suffer so much. And I told this teacher that I was bulimic and that I also couldn't feel my abs because I was like obsessed with everybody was obsessed with having, abs, right?
Being jacked. You're very jacked nowadays, by the way.
Well, that's a very long process of understanding that I actually need muscle mass for health, and the stretching is not the solution for, a lifetime of, especially when you're hypermobile. So I told this teacher that I couldn't feel my abs, and I knew I couldn't feel my abs because I didn't get ab sore the way my classmates did when we did Pilates. So there was a Pilates requirement as part of our dance thing. And I never got sore, but my roommate who was pre-med, she would always complain of being sore. And so I told this teacher, I can't feel my ab, or I don't get sore, I can't feel my abs, and I'm bulimic, and I knew these things were connected. And she suggested that I lay face down on a beanbag shaped hamburger bun. So this is like a prop used in the Iyengar yoga space, and it's filled with sand. So it's very, very hard. And she said, just lay down on it and breathe into it. And so I laid face down on this rock and started to feel just unbelievable pain, like insane amounts of pain. And knowing what I know now as a person in the body space, like that's called visceral pain. Like that was the agony of your organs that had been hiding in the dark, obscured by all of my anxiety and by the eating disorder and by all the stresses I was running away from. But that pain also helped me to not only feel that discomfort, but it also tapped into grief and tapped into rage and tapped into all of the emotions that were festering in this little, 19-year-old body that was crying out for help. And that's how I started to tap in to myself. And I literally the next day, I woke up in the morning and I was like, I need to have that thing again. And I rolled up a hand towel and I wrapped the hand towel to make it look like a honey bun. And I put it on my abdomen and I just moved it around different parts of my gut. And I breathed into all these different parts. And I would do this every morning like a ritual because I'm very disciplined. And through going into my body, I started to finally accept my body. I started to have my feelings. I started to speak the truth and experienced moving beyond. I haven't thrown up in 20, unless I had food poisoning. I can count the number of times I've thrown up because that's what a bulimic will if I throw up again, I'm bulimic, but I did eat some bad turkey chili at Whole Foods and that fucked me up. So
you gotta just let that shit out.
And it came out all directions, every
double
which
dragon.
way.
That's the worst. Like when you think about the food that you ate too, it makes you like sicker.
Oh.
You're like, blah, and then you're like, I think it must have been that chili, blah, and you just can't stop.
It's a reflex, right?
Yeah.
It's like autonomic reflex, the gag response. Yeah, and so healing through that, and then just doing a lot of research and a lot of study, and then trying to analyze for the past multiple decades the human body in the way that I do. I've transmuted that practice into a much softer, broader tool, and it's called the Courgeous Ball, that I use for all sorts of purposes, not just for recovering bulimics, but for people who have low back pain and people who have scar tissue in their abdomen, or people who have challenges with their breath, which brings us to Body by Breath.
What would that class that you just took us through be called? Because Mark was mentioning that Jill Miller's coming to town. We're going to do some yoga. And I was like, okay. So I was imagining something totally different than what you took us through. I'm actually going to grab the other balls that you had us use. But what would that be described as?
It's called unfortunate misbranding by the global marketplace that doesn't necessarily have a hole for me to sit in yet. I have been creating a regenerative fitness program for the past 20 years. And now, it's interesting because now the term regeneration is one of the pie slices in the greater fitness complex. But yes, it sort of fit into the yoga box because that was my background. I started doing yoga from age 11 on, and professionally.
From age 11? Oh, yeah, the videos.
Yeah, videos,
okay,
exactly.
Okay.
You can count Raquel Welch's yoga video as the beginning of my yoga career.
See if you can bring it up, Andrew.
I'll see what I can find.
It's, oh my God. So it was Bikram's series. So if you're familiar with Bikram yoga, so she was a student of Bikram. It's called Raquel Welch True Health and Beauty. And you can see there's a trailer on YouTube, and she's wearing a camouflage bikini running on the beach. And there's a Humvee or a Jeep or something chasing her, and she's like running on the beach. Ooh. That's the trailer, but it's Bikram's series. He ended up suing her because she obviously infringed on his like series of IP. But that was my first introduction to yoga. But I grew up in Santa Fe. It was like very hippie. So yoga was like that was fitness in Santa Fe. It was yoga. So how do I define myself as a practitioner? I would say I'm a leader in the regenerative fitness space. I'm a part of what I would call the movement. But in terms of my credential, I'm a yoga therapist. And maybe it's that word yoga that trips people up, and then they assume, oh, we're going to be doing these either flowy postures or warrior two, down dog, what have you. But I've created a program called, there you go.
This is one of them that popped up, so I'm not sure. But
no, I'm pretty sure she's in a bikini in it, but maybe it's a one piece. No, you're right. It's the onesie. It's a zebra print, not camouflage. Oh, she's gorgeous. God, she's amazing. She just passed away.
Oh.
What an entrepreneur, and what an incredible actress. And so they do this in this like tiled sauna.
Wow.
There you go.
Imagine going home to that every day.
To these videos, like stretching and stuff. Yeah.
I am dying to meet some of her backup people. That was one of my first things I did. I was a backup yoga person in a friend's yoga video that went very wide. And that was such a big deal to get cast as a backup yoga person.
Is there, are some people that are in a kind of traditional yoga space, are they like angry with you because maybe, I don't even know where you stand on this, but do you not necessarily believe in some of the yoga practices and you believe more in some of the stuff that you're learning and teaching now?
Well, obviously I believe in what I'm teaching completely. Right. My work, when I started teaching yoga, I started to see a lot of problems in the yoga classrooms, specifically around that people had to do poses that their bodies couldn't accommodate.
And you hold them for minutes at a time a lot of times.
Or go through dynamic ranges that just didn't seem like they were a good fit for a lot of different structures. And that, you had to kind of stick with the sequence, but I knew better. I had things that could help people, because part of where I went after college during college, I ended up going to work at this place on the East Coast called the Omega Institute for Holistic Studies, which is a big retreat center. So people are in the West Coast are familiar with Esalen, this are you familiar with Esalen? Nsima? Oh, never mind. Okay, so maybe the listenership of this podcast may have no idea what I'm talking about. So, okay, I come to you from a completely alien life form. This is awesome. All right, let me describe. So there are these...
We don't even have women on the show. So
here it comes.
We can start from that.
Oh my God. Okay, fabulous. I am representing so many diverse communities right now. All right, so there are these places all over the world called retreat centers, and they're basically campuses that are like campgrounds with nice buildings and rooms or yurts or whatever for adults to come and do continuing education, or to take a vacation where they can just for a whole week learn yoga or learn holistic basketball playing, or drawing on the right side of the brain, or angel cards. I mean, like or meditate with Ram Dass, like the disparate wellness, or it used to be called the self-help community or self-realization community. Like it keeps changing. Now it's I think called wellness, but it used to be the self-help or new age. When I was into it, it was the new age community. And so I went and I worked for one of these places on the East Coast called Omega. And I lived in a tent for an entire summer. By the way, this is how my bulimia healed, in addition to the body-based work I did. Living in a tent on the ground for an entire summer. So something about earthing and grounding actually was very effective for regulating my nervous system, getting out of the city, and being of service, like helping other people all summer with luggage or finding which building they should go to. So I did work study. I traded my presence as an employee in exchange for classes. And one of the classes I took every day was yoga from this master named Glenn Black, who turns out to be a lifelong mentor of mine in yoga and bodywork. What was the question? Where did we go? What was the question?
The question is...
yoga tune-up.
Yeah. The question is kind of just centered around whether, I guess, people are upset with you because maybe I guess you're pigeonholed into the yoga space, but then come to find out that maybe you don't love the practice of actual yoga.
Come to find out I'm actually a disruptor of the yoga space, right? So I went all in the yoga space. Glenn was an incredible mentor to me, and I studied with many different masters, learning different yoga formats, from Raquel, from my original teacher, my video teacher, to a lot of different formats. But ultimately, one of the things I learned from Glenn were biomechanics, anatomy, fascia science, and massage. And when I moved out to Los Angeles after I finished college and after I finished a couple of years in Chicago, I started a dance theater company with a number of other graduates, but I moved to LA because I wanted to be an actress and I wanted to do it out in LA. But I did yoga as my sustenance, as my soul sustenance, because it took care of me. It was my greatest regulating thing. But I had learned all this stuff from Glenn, and I'd been studying massage also on the side. By the way, in college, I was doing work study at a shiatsu school. So I had all these other healing arts skills. And when I started finally teaching yoga, and that's a longer thing, but when I finally started teaching, I saw problems in the classroom. And I knew I had tools gained from my studies with massage and human anatomy that I could help people if I would do these little tune-ups. If we would just stop doing the up dog, down dog, chaturanga, and let's actually work on the shoulder. Let me teach you the joints of the shoulder. Let me teach you the bones of the shoulder, how the shoulders actually move. I got you.
So if Nsima and I are to do some of the movements that you mentioned, it's going to look very different. And so why not just take a moment to
disassemble,
tune me up, and then tune him up maybe with a different practice, right?
That's right. That's right. And so those little tune-ups became these little detours that I would take in the middle of a classroom. Of course, I got called in by the management, and they said, you can't do that here. And so I said, well, then I'll leave.
Where's your bolster?
So I said, well, I'll leave. And I went and I rented a martial arts studio. And quite frequently, I was paying my students to be there. It was very hard to make a living. I was waitressing, but I was so dedicated to this. And I ended up amassing a following. And this was before I even had Facebook. And so word of mouth, got around, and then Facebook existed, and then it's a much longer story. But I decided to term what I was doing yoga tune-up, because I was more interested in tuning up people's bodies than doing actual yoga poses. I thought it was more interesting to disassemble we could use the yoga pose as a construct, and then if we disassemble it and then teach you about all the joint mechanics that belong to it, grease you up, polish you up, maybe even do some massage on these different parts. And so I brought balls into the classroom to help people propriocept their body parts. And once they propriocepted them, then they could actually activate them better and locate them better. And so it just became a thing. And so I think I was probably one of the first, if not the first person, to bring massage tools into the yoga classroom, but to make it into a format that was duplicatable. And then longer story, I met my now husband, and I met a number of other students who were like, I want you to teach me. And I created a teacher training program around it. And my husband and I ended up building a business around my methodologies. And that's our company, Tune Up Fitness. And so we have Yoga Tune Up, we have the role model method, which is exclusively the rolling, because the rolling goes way beyond the yoga space. We work with so many different communities. And then now Body by Breath.
There's a lot. I hope we have enough time to talk about some of this stuff with you. But there's, when we were going through that class with you and you had us using these balls, these courageous balls, I'll roll this over to you so you can kind of describe it.
The courageous ball.
The courageous. I keep calling it courageous. But you had us using that, and it's soft, right? We've talked about myofascial release on the show. We've had a lot of guests that have come on, and most people are talking about hard implements.
We're getting in there.
Yeah, digging in, right? But when we were using that, there were certain positions that you had us put it like on our lower back and breathe into that area. It gave feedback, allowing us to feel what it feels like to breathe in. But then it just did so much. And you don't expect that with a soft implement.
Soft is supreme.
I thought you were going to say it's a new hard. I was like, hey, that's good.
Men, take note. You're good. We're all good.
Wow. Yeah.
Say that
Soft,
again.
I'll say it faster.
Supreme.
Soft is supreme.
Yes.
And yeah, I wrote a chapter in a medical textbook called Fascia Function and Medical Applications. And it's a book that came out in December 2021, I think. And it covers different aspects of fascia for the medical community. And they reached out to me to write the chapter on self-myofascial release. So I've been teaching with soft tools for years, and I have, wrote a book about soft tools and the benefits of my approach and this and that. And I had to go into a lot of research in order to write this. It's a narrative review, to write the review. And hardness is one of the variables that is the least looked at. But when you look at the few papers, and there's about 5 papers, 5, maybe 6 now, that have looked at hardness, the results you see in the clients or in the cohorts are pretty astonishing. And so what the soft tool can do that a hard tool can't do is, and by the way, there are so many different sizes of tools. So size also matters, and that's another variable that we can talk about. But in terms, but in general, people use hard foam rollers. Foam is actually very hard, right? The black foam, which is that ubiquitous, or even the white foam, is actually quite hard in terms of the stress transfer that it does into your body. What is stress transfer? Well, it's like, think of ground reaction forces. Like you feel different in your body running on turf versus running on concrete versus running on sand versus running on grass. Well, tools are textiles that transfer stress into your body as well. And so trying to look at, well, what are the kind of forces that are coming into the body from the tool? And what you can see with hard tools is that the hard tools initiate in most bodies a muscle bracing response because it hurts. And your body's trying to protect itself from the hurt. Your body, that's your autonomic nervous system. That's not you consciously, because you consciously are like, I'm going to just breathe and I'm going to try to receive. But you're like, I feel owie on my quad when I stick a lacrosse ball on it.
Yeah.
Right?
And your body knows that, and you sense that, and you're like, fuck, this is going to hurt.
It's going to hurt, right. And so you're just rolling against your own tension. You're rolling against your own unconscious tension. And that's not very therapeutic. It's just arm wrestling somebody with a ball. But what the softer tools can do, and there are a number of other parameters in terms of what I teach to help people acclimate themselves and their pain pressure threshold, meaning, their ability to tolerate pressure into their body. But with a softer tool, because it's not as threatening to the tissue, you don't get a danger response from the nervous system. So you don't ignite like a sympathetic, brakes on muscle bracing response. And so that's one of the gifts that a soft tool can do, is that you can just get in there right away. And then time is another factor. Like we spent a lot of, we talk about time under tension when you're under a bar. Mm-hmm. Well, I talk about time under intention, right? And so we have a really skillful way of applying the ball, but also there's a mindset going on, right? I had you guys repeating this thing to yourself, my breath is home. So there's also some cognitive effects that I was introducing to your body so that you had, this ability to increase your tolerance for the implement into your structure. There's also, I'm going a little bit off here because I'm talking about a number of other features, but in terms of the soft tool, like the soft tools that I use, we have a fleet of balls called the role model balls, and they all are soft, pliable rubber. The Gorgeous ball that we use to decompress the low back is inflated, and it's very, very broad. And then there's smaller balls. The smallest ones are called yoga tune-up balls. Then there's the plus balls, a little bit bigger, and there's the alpha ball, which is a little bit smaller than a softball. Yeah, so they're all different sizes, but they're all a grippy, pliable rubber. So they conform, they have squish to them. And so when you're rolling them up against joint junctions, the bones of your joints will sink into the ball, and you're not going to have an annoying pinching, bruising, or alarm go off, right? So it's not going to leave you with bruises or skin irritation from the hardness of the tool, right? So if you're rolling lacrosse balls up and down your spine, you're like rickety, rackety, rickety, rackety, pap, 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 pap. But there's no yield to the soft tissues. Yeah. So I like the soft tools because your bony prominences can tuck in, they conform to your form, and then you have more of a molding quality of the tissue and your nervous system, and that's where you're going to have a therapeutic response. Then you can compound that with your position, you can compound that with the way you're breathing, and of course mindset, and then you get this cocktail of physiological relaxation plus therapy.
Yeah.
Which is what a massage therapist is trying to do to you on a table.
Mm-hmm. We'll never stop talking to you guys about how important your sleep quality is and how it can help speed up your health and fitness, your fat loss, your life goals. That's why we've been partnered with and sleeping on 8 Sleep mattresses for so long now. And right now is one of the best times you can get yourself the Pod Pro cover or the Pod Pro mattress because they're having their Memorial Day sale. So 8 Sleep mattresses have amazing technology to cool down your bed as low as 55 degrees. Your side can be a certain temperature, your partner's side can be a certain temperature, and they also have an app that allows you to see your heart rate variability, your heart rate, your tosses and turns, all of these different metrics to help improve your sleep night by night. It is literally the Tesla of beds. And our sleep has been transformed because of it. We and myself used to wake up in a puddle of our own sweat, and now with the 8 Sleep mattress every single night is blissful. Head to 8sleep.com/power project for exclusive Memorial Day savings on the Pod Pro cover or the Pod Pro mattress through June 6th. Stay cool this summer with 8 Sleep, shipping the US, Canada, and all those good places. Link in the description down below.
I end up doing a lot of myofascial release stuff just within the last maybe like year or so. I've been implementing more and more of it. Of course, I've heard all your stuff and heard Sturette's stuff forever, and I just was not smart enough to catch on and just start to implement it more often. I did do some of it when I was powerlifting, but it was like, let me just kind of tune up my body for this particular movement and then like not touch it again and not really address it. But I have noticed that, when I do go into the gym and I do, let's say, go face down on like a medicine ball, that's hard. I'll set my timer on my phone or something like that for 2 or 3 minutes. And it takes me probably a good 40 seconds or so just to like melt into it because of how hard it is. So I have not even really thought of trying to use something softer until you were bringing that up today. So that's a practice that I could utilize, and I can breathe better into it because the stuff that you had us do today, especially, we weren't even working on the shoulders. But our shoulder mobility changed a lot, and the mobility through the thoracic spine changed a ton just by utilizing some breathing and breathing into those products that you brought in today that are teaching us and allowing you to kind of like melt and meld into these positions.
Yeah. And you get this amazing biofeedback about the behavior of your breath. And also you start to feel where this subtle tension is being held in your body. I mean, we're so unaware of our resting state. You know what I mean? Like our resting state is not very restful. You know, when you're completely relaxed, we don't realize like, oh, my shoulders are still holding on, right? Because we went through that check-in multiple times and you thought, oh, this is great. I'm lying on my back. It feels so good. But then we did this decompression of the low back. And then we did this decompression of the thorax. And then we did this decompression of this zone 3, right? The face, neck, and head. And, you know, the elegance of the movement or the lack of restriction in the shoulder movement. And so there's a payoff in joint mechanics. And then now's the time to train. I mean, it's either the time to go to sleep because you're so relaxed, or now's a good time to train. If I'm doing, and I would qualify, do a much shorter session if you're going to go train.
Yeah.
Or time to pee. Everyone had to take a pee break.
Yo.
Everyone's
Really
bladders.
bad. Yeah.
Real quick question, man, Andrew, because like you had a drastic change, right?
Yeah.
What can you just kind of describe kind of what happened to you?
Yeah, I'll do my best. So, we kind of did we ran diagnostics on like how far our mobility in our shoulders can go from like waist to above our head, while
Lying
we're
down on our
lying
back,
down, without grunting, without lifting up the spine, and without really forcing it. And I was shocked. I could barely go kind of pointing my hand straight up in the air. And I was like, whoa, like I could instantly started feeling my spine moving all over the place. By the time we did maybe 4 or 5 rounds of different things, it just flopped down on the floor. And I was like, whoa, like this is really eye opening. And my left shoulder has been bugging me pretty bad. And that feels really good right now. And what I was explaining to Jill is I think my body's so tense and so trying to hang on and protect itself all the time that just getting into that parasympathetic state allowed my body to kind of just hey, let's chill out. We're safe right now. Now, I don't know if that's for everybody, but I know for myself, I think that's kind of more along the lines of what was going on for me personally, but it could be so many other things just like I said, letting my body let go, allowed my shoulder mobility to just kind of be willy-nilly.
Yeah, and what I try to do with this new book, with Body by Breath, is teach people to be able to easily replicate a physiological relaxation. And I have this thing called the 5 Ps, and they're so easy to achieve, and it's really easy to accomplish. And these 5 Ps make a difference every time that you perform them. So it is the inner medicine chest. It's the compound pharmacy. Do you want me to go over the 5 Ps? Because I didn't illuminate them for you when we did the class. So the 5 Ps are, the first P is perspective. And perspective has to do with mindset. And so the mindset is giving yourself a top-down permission to go into the relaxation response. And so for our top-down, our mindset for our class, our perspective was, my breath is home. Now, if I'm focusing on, because I was trying to teach you guys about these 3 zones of respiration, but if I'm exclusively focusing on relaxation, it could be, I allow myself to relax completely. It could be something like that. Or if I'm processing something heavy emotional, it might be, all of me is welcome here. So you can have any top-down suggestion that is going to help to be a good host to the body-based experience that you're about to have. Because the other 4 Ps are all going to illuminate my body thinks and feels. It's going to illuminate all these feelings from the body. The second P to make sure you have in place is place. So for your body to achieve deep relaxation, it needs to be in a place that brings you peace. So we're not talking about if I'm in the airport and I was this morning, actually, I was running late to the airport and I was carrying my suitcase, I was rolling my suitcase and I'm trying not to have a panic attack, because that's where, by the way, that's where the panic attacks happen for me is the airport. And so I'm doing a number of different breath practices and counting my footsteps to try to keep me from spinning out. And I didn't end up having a panic attack. Yay. And I got here on time. But place, ideally, if you're really looking for physiological relaxation, it needs to be a place that brings you peace, where you feel safe. So safety is a big part of it. The second P, and that's that place where you're just like, and you guys you're in your gym. Like you guys feel safe there. So you're like, this is my home. I love it. The third P is position. Position is one of those factors that alters our blood pressure and alters our postural tone, our postural resting tone. So when we recline, so ideally for relaxation, we're in a recline or we're in a gentle slope. And that gentle slope is where the pelvis is higher than the heart, higher than the head. And what that does is it induces a vagal dominant state. It creates the baroreceptor reflex. And the baroreceptor reflex is a reflex that happens because the brain is afraid that too much blood is coming at it. So if you go upside down, the amount of blood in your brain is highly regulated. And so once your pelvis is higher than your heart and gravity starts to make more blood flow towards your head, the carotid arteries in the side of the neck are going to sense that bulge of blood coming at it. And there's a very quick relay reflex arc from the sensors in the carotid sensing this pressure via the vagus nerve, and it goes to the brainstem, and then the vagus says, slow down heart, slow down breath, and all of a sudden you get free relaxation response just by being, and you can get this all the way upside down, but why stress your body? Just lift your butt up on top of a book, on top of a cordless ball, on top of a block, or on top of a couple of weights, and you get that for free. So we're compounding all these relaxation things. So we've got perspective, place, position. The fourth P is pace of breath. And so the breath pacing is a way to inoculate yourself away from sympathetic and into parasympathetic. And so ideally, we're slowing down our exhales, longer exhalations versus the time of inhalation are typically the thing that's going to induce the relaxation response and bring us to a vagal dominant state. There are paradoxical breath patterns where we can do things with inhales to also do that. But for the most part, it's longer exhalations get us into the relaxation response. And then the fifth P is palpation. And that's where the pressure of the balls on strategic parts of the body helps to bring about that unwind, that unbelievable unwind. And so if you get at least 3 of these P's in place, if you have all 5 P's, like you got it, like you are going to go, but get as many P's as you can. And you'll get that physiological relaxation.
Seemed like an amazing teaching tool, trying to teach people about like lifting and, trying to do a deadlift or something, you'll say, or a bench press or even a squat, you'll say, engage your lats, you want to have your lats involved in like all 3 movements really. And when you're trying to explain it, people are like, lats, like, I don't know. And it's like so vague. And then you're vague with your explanation because you're like, I don't really even know how to describe how to flex your lats. But with, the way that we were doing this, where we were laying down on our back, we had the ball basically, kind of under the armpit-ish area. And you can feel yourself kind of breathing into those areas. So I thought it was a really awesome teaching tool, to be able to teach people like that's when we're training some of these exercises, when you're doing a lat pull down or you're doing a deadlift, this is the area that we want you to activate. And if you know how to breathe into it, the odds are you're going to be able to learn how to contract it probably a lot quicker.
But in this situation, what you're doing is you're providing the lat with its optimal length tension relationship. So typically, especially if you are, not that you're overtrained, but you're like, I've trained my lats so much that they typically are a little bit stiff.
Yeah, tonic.
Excessively stiff, right? They're tonic. And they don't, it's like I can't get a good side bend. It's hard for me to get my arm overhead. I'm not really able to get that wingspan. But because of the time under intention, because of the time and the locus of where the balls were, we are interacting with the fluid environment of the fascial tissues as well as the fibrous environment of the fascial tissues. And then the muscle fibers are like, oh yeah, I actually live longer, but my connective tissues are so coiled and tight that I didn't have a chance to have my length show up. And then guess what? You're going to have a better lift when you're optimized on axis from sacrum to humerus. If my tissues are shortened, I can't contract things that can't lengthen, right? So I have to be able to fully lengthen in order to fully contract.
And then the idea of like fully lengthening just under like a one-arm lat pull down is much different because you're still way under tension, right?
Yeah, so I think there's direct transfer, but also for the high performance body, you have to refill the tank. You can't just burn out and burn to a crisp. So one of the reasons, and there's a whole chapter in the book called The Role of Recovery for my athletes, for the, the coaches that I work with, so that the resilience is not just, I can perform. The resilience is this balance of parasympathetic, sympathetic. Like, you're good at running 26.2 miles, but can you, not that you have to meditate for 26.2 miles, but it's like, what is your tolerance capacity for a parasympathetic dominant state?
Yeah, what's your capacity to do nothing? Like, a lot of times people that exercise a lot, their capacity to do nothing and just totally chill and not have toe spacers on and not be working on some weakness with their fingers or whatever. Like, it's
okay to have the toe spacers on when you're
all right. I'll cut you some slack.
That's a good stack.
You can work on your grip at the same time.
I think that's a good stack, actually.
You know what I'm saying? Though? Like, your mind is still halfway not there. It's almost like you're it's almost like you're picking up your phone while your spouse is talking to you. Like, you're not all the way there.
Oh my gosh. But I will say there is this phenomenon that you're describing, and I talk about it in the book, called, you're gonna be blown away, relaxation-induced anxiety. I'll say it again. Relaxation-induced anxiety. So what relaxation-induced anxiety is a phenomenon. It's not in the manual of mental health disorders, but this is a phenomenon that happens. And I came across this about 25 years ago in a textbook. And I was like, huh? And it was talking about this phenomenon where people are laying in Shavasana. So Shavasana is corpse pose. It's the final pose in a yoga class. And they're in corpse pose and they get, they're uncomfortable laying still. And they can't help but look around or have fidgets or have involuntary fidgets or pain or what have you. Relaxation-induced anxiety is a phenomenon that happens in bodies that feel threat in stillness. Now, that is not an uncommon experience. Think of how many people are meditation averse. Up to 53% of people in this one paper that I saw have relaxation-induced anxiety, because when you are still, that's when the discomfort sets in. And it's not like just, well, a meditation, I can just push through that. And eventually, probably you will if you can actually, conform to the meditation. But there are genuine, unconscious neurological processes that spring up in so many bodies that prevent us from experiencing total stillness. And that is not a judgment on you as a bad or good person. It's just what is. I remember I was giving a massage to my husband when I first started dating him. So I'd read about this phenomenon, and then I was giving a massage to my husband when I first started dating him. And as you do, like now I'm just like, go roll on your balls. But then I was like, very good. I was massaging him, and all of a sudden, sorry, I mean, we've been together for a long time. So I will work on him occasionally, but we definitely do not
really qualifying this right
the amount of massage that he got in the beginning of dating. Okay. We have 2 kids and a business. Shall I go on? Like a third of the way through, I don't know where I was, maybe massaging his back. He was like, he started going like this. He was like flicking his hands and like, he was like, oh God, I can't stop it. And what was happening was he was having rushes down his median nerve. Like all of a sudden he was going into this deep relaxation, and then his nervous system hijacked him. And he just had these unstoppable, irritating nerve rushes. Now people might get this in their sciatic nerve, or they might start to have, restless leg syndrome, or their jaw starts to grind. Like we even know that during sleep is not very restful for many bodies. So relaxation-induced anxiety is the inability for a body to be comfortable in stillness. And so I'm fascinated by this. I've had it at times, and I'm a fidgeter, like a total fidgeter, but like put me in Shavasana or tell me to meditate, and I'm like, I cannot wait. Like, let's do it. So I somehow have been able to work with this. But in general, I mean, you can hear how fast I'm talking. I'm a very sympathetically tuned person, which is why I think I've gone so deep into the parasympathetic work to help me match my high excitation. But for people with relaxation-induced anxiety and the inability to find peace in stillness, they need to have their relaxation response too for their health. And so this book has so many solutions for them. And that's why, breathe doesn't mean that you're just breathing in a statue-like position. Like, we couple breathing with rolling, with movement. And then one of the tools in the book is non-sleep deep rest. That's Yoga Nidra. That might come or it might not come. And it's okay if that's that chapter, you leave that for 8 years, 8 years from now. Like, the other chapters really help you with that physiological relaxation for anybody, whether a body is stillness averse or whether they like stillness.
Power Project family, your normal shoes are making you weak. This is why I partner with Vivo Barefoot Shoes, because they have a wide toe box, they're flat, and they're flexible. So with every single step you're taking, if you're taking a 10-minute walk outside or when you're working out in the gym, your feet are able to do what they're supposed to do in this shoe. They have tons of options for hiking, running, training in the gym, chilling and relaxing, casual shoes for if you're out on a date. You need to check them out. And Andrew, how can they get it?
Yes, that's over at vivobarefoot.com/powerproject, and you guys will receive 15% off your order automatically. Again, vivobarefoot.com/powerproject. Links to them down in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
I do quickly want to mention something about the book, because it's sort of like a textbook, but it is not boring like a typical textbook.
Loaded with information.
Loaded with a lot of good applicable information that whether you're an athlete who's just trying to be able to recover better and learn some of these things, you'll be able to use it. If you're a practitioner or you're a trainer, it's super fucking helpful. But it's so solid how many things you can just easily apply. Like there's breath work for being able to prepare you to sleep. You know what I mean? And when you understand that, you're going to be able to fall asleep faster. It's so useful. So it's just great job on that book.
Oh, thank you, Nsima.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
I think one of the things you're talking about, like with people being restless, is a lot of people are just in pain. You're just going to you might not even really realize how many times you fidget in the middle of the night, but it would make sense if if your lower back hurts or your hip hurts or this hurts or that hurts, your body's really intelligent. Your body's like, I don't like laying in this position. Let's go to the other side. Then you go to the other side and the shoulder hurts on that side. And, you're in, I think a lot of people are in a lot more pain than maybe they even realize. Why do you think sometimes these things don't register as pain? For example, if we go to use one of the smaller balls that you have, and we put it on our shoulder or like you had us do our neck. Mm-hmm. Why do we get a sense of like pain there, but we had no idea that we had an issue there at all until you put pressure there?
Yeah, I always like to say, the balls don't hurt. They just show you where the hurt is. So until we actually start to play with the textures of our own tension, we don't realize what little tiny nerves are all trapped up in there or all jumbled up in there or all agglomerated in there in terms of, thickened fascia or lack of good contractility in the muscles or inflammatory fluids that are just trapped from lack of movement because you're protecting it. So, pain signals travel very slowly, whereas movement travels very fast. And so I just want to address a couple things that you said. So one of the reasons that the fidgets also distract us from the pain is because the brain is like, oh, movement, squirrel. And so it's picking up on the movement because those are faster moving signals, whereas pain is a lot slower. You think about, you stick your hand on the hot frying pan. This is the classic, right? You stick your hand on the hot frying pan, and then 2 seconds later, you're like, ow! You pull your hand off, you shake. The pain disappears while you're shaking. The minute you stop shaking, oh, it hurts again. And you're like, then you start walking and pacing, and you're like, oh my God, water. You're like any other stimulus to change the pain response. So our brain is equipped to process like pain more slowly than others. But once we do get still, pain starts to really surface. Or once we are probed with a little tiny rubber ball. It's not like a hammer. It's not it's not an ice pick, but the precision of sort of locating these different areas of stuckness or stagnation or lack of movement, we're going to feel the irritants that are in that area, and that's why that shows up. And everybody has these spots. I mean, it's like we sleep weird or we, had an accident when we were 7, and then now we're 42, and oh my God, my knee clicks all the time. What's that from? It was, well, because your leg got slammed in the door by your brother, and you forgot about it, and now if you're, you've walked weird the rest of your life, and now here you are. So I mean, it's like we have this legacy that we're walking around with, and the massage has a habit of revealing that stuff. So does movement, right? Movement patterns. You can, look at people under the bar or just look at gait, or there's so many different ways to see this. But I love pressure because I feel like it's such a truth teller. Like it's so direct. Yeah. But you can also change it very quickly through different applications or through adjusting your pain pressure threshold. And then you can actually reprogram your brain. Basically, that sounds so tacky, reprogram your brain just through retraining and neuroplastic changes so that your brain no longer is holding on to phantom pain that actually isn't there anymore. So a lot of times the brain just remembers a habit. And so it's keeping tension in an area because, you threw your neck out 8 years ago, but there's nothing there. There's no there. I remember I did... Mayim Bialik is one of my students, and when the book came out, we did an Instagram Live, and she gets infrequent, very crippling back pain, but has had all the scans. They're all clean. But her psoas locks up. Why? We don't know, but it locks up. And so we addressed the lobe. We did everything that you guys did today, by the way. We did the lateral raphe, the lumbar decompression move. We do some other stuff deep in the gut that we didn't do, and some other psoas trickery and some hamstring trickery. And that can really be helpful. But it's like these patterns show up. Sometimes they're not biological, they're neurological. The brain is saying, this is my stress pattern. And when I get triggered by life stresses, this is how I protect this being. And so we just have to keep learning to work with that, whether it's our restlessness or whether it's like legit pain that puts us, into a non-movement state.
What if somebody is doing some of these things, using some of these implements, and they find that they just can't stop holding their breath? The reason why I'm asking this is because, in jiu-jitsu, one of the first things that you have to kind of teach someone is stop holding your breath when you're trying to do something. A lot of new people have a tendency of, when they're trying to produce force, they hold their breath. Now, I see sometimes when people are rolling, when they get places, or even maybe once they start, they're like, and they start holding their breath, which is why, when the video comes out, you'll see you were taking us through breathing the whole time, probably so we wouldn't have the habit of holding our breath in certain areas.
Your breath is very labile. It's very dynamic, and it is constantly responding to external and internal signals. When you hold your breath because of pain or because of discomfort, it's just a protective armoring response, right? It's bracing for a punch. And so obviously this is not very threatening, but in the right position, it can really hurt, right? In the wrong position, you know what I'm saying? In the right position, it can, if I have pain there, or if I have non-movement, if my diaphragm and my intercostals don't move well at a certain rotation angle, I'm going to all of a sudden feel like somebody punched me in my liver, right, or my kidney, and it might take my breath away because because I'm under threat. Anything that threatens breath. By the way, your body is very smart. Anything that threatens breath, it's like no go there, and it will do anything it can to convince you to get out and to not be there. So I think I'm totally rambling right now. Like, did I just conclude myself? I conclude.
Well, when you had us on our back, and we had the balls on the sides of our lower back, and then you had us kind of like windshield wiper our legs back and forth.
Yes.
As you're breathing through that, it was way easier to get a lot more movement, a lot more range of motion as you're breathing through it. But if you do hold your breath and you kind of like usually what happens, when you first go to lay on something and you've never done that before, and you go on the so right or even one of these balls, sometimes that's the first response is to kind of like tighten everything up. But you really want to see people try their best over time to really try to relax and melt into it.
Yes. So in the book, I detail 3 zones of respiration. So we have these 3 zones that are echoes of the diaphragm's dominance as your prime mover of breathing. And so when we're in calm breathing, the diaphragm can go down and up. The diaphragm lives in the rib cage, lives in the lower 6 ribs. It's like an octopus. It's like hiding in a cave in there. And when it decides to come out, it contracts down, and there's a distension of the gut, low back, pelvic floor, all that stuff. If I'm in a more sympathetic, activated state, I'm going to be sharing some of that breathing with the ribs, the thorax. The ribs are going to flare out and flare up. But if I go into a high stress state, I'm going to recruit head, neck, and shoulders as a rapid, in case of emergency zone, so that I can actually get that last quick of fuel, because this is coupled with the HPA axis, and then I can get the hell out of there. Yeah. And so I just want to help to familiarize people with, well, when are they going into zone 3? And like, you see when you're in a defensive state, the zone 3 is what comes up. And what I mean by defensive is the ball hurt. And so I'm primed for defense. And so I think it's just really interesting for bodies to just keep reviewing where are those parts of their body where they don't even realize they're on guard.
Yeah.
And, but you can't know that until you actually tactilely go there, which is why I was really psyched to give you guys a class ahead of time, because the book is full of so much information, but this is not meant to live on pages. It's meant to live in bodies. And it's hard. I can explain this stuff all day, but now you guys have a living, a deep knowing of.
Oh no!
Did the thing?
What the audience doesn't know is I'm propped up on 9 feet of risers here in order to be at the same level as Nsima and Mark, and I just fell. I don't know why I fell.
Andrew hit the trap door button, trying to get you fed to the sharks. Yeah.
Oh my God. So I've got sweat all over because I have a fear response of falling, but we're good. So anyway, as I was saying, relax, just chill out.
And so let me ask you this.
Don't fall.
With your implements, even though like when I was expecting to use them, I wasn't expecting them to be so useful because they're hard, but they're soft, right? Do you think there's a place for very hard implements? Like, do you think there's a place for like kettlebell, the So Right, any of these types of, you think there's a place for that if you can relax into them?
I think there are some bodies that can tolerate that. I don't think most bodies can. There are now a number of case reports of people harming pancreases or tearing nerves or tearing colons from using these tools. You can find them in Google.
Now I have a quick question because like, for example, with some of the, I'm not going to name implement names, but with some of these implements, I am able to really relax into it. But could that be, like now I'm thinking that might not be the best thing to be able to relax into something like that.
Are there particular areas?
Hard.
Yeah. Particular areas
I would say the
concern.
viscera. I mean, I'd say the viscera. Yeah. I mean, I'd be cautious, especially of, stuff within the gut sac.
Okay.
Because that's where most of these injuries have happened that are in the literature.
Okay.
So I'd say caution, but I also, it's like, oh, it's fun to lay over a basketball every now and then, but I just I'm also hypermobile. So I'm like, I don't want to create a hernia anywhere. That doesn't sound fun. I don't want to give myself an inguinal hernia.
A wine bottle works pretty good.
Because that's a very thin, it's, anatomically that region, especially around the inguinal ligament, is very thin. And so people are rolling on their abdomen. The fascial tissue, the abdominal aponeurosis, the rectus sheath is at its thinnest there. And so I would just be a little bit cautious.
Got it.
Yeah.
What about the movements that we choose in fitness? Could we spend less time doing some of these things in the first place if we're not deadlifting and squatting, and maybe some of these movements aren't great for us? I
don't know about that. I think it's great to deadlift and squat. It's been very helpful for me in rehabbing my hip. Like lifting heavy was protective of me leading up to. I had a total hip replacement 5 years ago, so I'm not quite sure what your question is, because I mean I'm talking to power strength bodybuilder people. I just think you want to marry it with soft tissue work. I mean I can't get enough strength. I can't maintain strength just because of my connective tissue is so loose. I'm on the hypermobile mobility spectrum. And so I need some of what you guys got and you need some of what I got. You know what I'm saying? So like, we're just going to keep sharing. We're going to crosstalk. And why, this, like I said, I came to this not because I wanted to get looser. I came to this because I was having a mental health problem. Mental health is a body-wide thing. It doesn't just live in your head. And that's one of the messages that I really want to get across in the book. So people are like, well, you're so mobile. Why do you keep rolling? It's like, well, I'm not rolling to get looser. I'm rolling to stay sane.
Yeah, my thought process is like we do get like addicted. We get addicted to fitness, get addicted to running or lifting a particular exercise, a bench press or something. And maybe a recipe to help somebody get out of pain would be like, yo, bro, you ever think of just like not bench pressing for a little while?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I see what you're saying now.
Or maybe change your mechanics. Like there's something's going on where your elbow and your shoulder are killing you all the time.
Yeah, I think you can discover a lot about some of the underlying drive, some of the underlying emotional drive to keep pushing, to keep staying sympathetic by regressing considerably and, dipping into parasympathetic work like this. Like when I work with, very elite athletes or trainers like yourself, and do like a 3-day, or so we also have a 7-day. We have a 3-day body by breath immersion, and there's a 7-day yoga tune-up training, and there's a 2-day role model training. But when they're like, okay, I'm not going to do my other workouts, I'm just going to do this work, and their experience of the decompression, especially that builds day after day, and their ability to feel restored in stillness, because it does happen. I've seen it happen again and again. And what I mean by that is at the end of sessions, we usually do a stillness meditation, like in corpse pose, where, I'm guiding them, and it feels really good to be held. I don't mean physically held, but to be held by a voice that is guiding you through your physiology. It gives you something to do in those times. That these athletes, when they go back into their real life, outperform all their numbers. I mean, I've had people break records again and again after they've done this work, like a big dose of it. That's why I'm like, you run 26 miles in the marathon. Well, what about building parasympathetic endurance? What about building a tolerance for parasympathetic state? It's doable, but it is a skill, and it needs repetition, and it needs discipline around it. But then ultimately, it's a balance. Do a little bit of this, do a little bit of that, do a little bit of that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on like these things being like therapeutic, like where you mentioned that when you first laid down on that hamburger patty, that it seemed to release a lot of like emotion and things like that. What have you seen? And like, sometimes you see it online, or you see like, Human Garage and some other people that have some of these similar practices sometimes, and you're like, man, I don't know about that. Like the person's crying. Like, is this real? Like, what's your experience with that?
This work reveals your range of motion and your range of emotion. The emotions show up when you let go. And if we're held together all the time, we don't necessarily know what we're really feeling on the inside, because we're broadcasting, or we're performing, or we're working, or we're pushing, or we're doing for our family. When you start to slow down and reflect, it can be a boatload of emotion. And those emotions also are sensate. They're part of your body, and you'll experience them as emotional feelings and physical feelings. A lot of times people are walking around with a lot of physical feelings all the time, that pain in the neck, or that nausea, or a feeling of or urgency to pee, it's whatever. There's signals that your body is telling you all the time. And sometimes those are because of unfelt or unexpressed emotion. Now, I'm not a psychotherapist. I teach this work to psychotherapists and to mental health pros. In fact, this coming weekend, I'm at a body psychotherapy conference in San Francisco this weekend, because this work is very helpful in a safe therapeutic relationship with a mental health pro or clinical social worker who aren't licensed to touch, but they can guide somebody through self-touch to tap in, especially if people are so stuck in their head about their story, and their head has literally walked away from the sensations of their body, the experience of their body. And so this is a way to bring those two together into the same place. I mean, I was very motivated by Mental Health Pros in writing the second book, because so much of the feedback that I saw and what we were getting is people weren't just like, oh my God, it healed my knee, it healed my lower back. People were saying, I brought these with me when I was in the trauma unit watching my son be resuscitated. You know, like every day I was rolling on the balls while he was, you know what I mean? Like this is what what I hear and the stories I hear all the time. People are using this for emotional regulation as well as, oh, it really helped with my scar tissue.
Beef. Power Project family, it is grilling season. Now, I really don't know much about grilling since I use an air fryer at home. My boy Andrew does, though. So, since it's grilling season, it's time to get your hands on some Piedmontese beef. We love those glizzies. We love that beef. Andrew, tell them more about it.
Yeah, guys. So like you mentioned, they do have those glizzies.
Hey, yo!
For those that don't know, that's just a hot dog, but it's all beef hot dog and it's amazing. My favorite thing to smoke is their prime rib, though. And, you know, it's grilling season. So dust off those grills, dust off those smokers, and head over to cpbeef.com, and at checkout, enter promo code POWER to save 25% off your order. Links to them down in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
Get your glizzy gobbler on.
What you got over there, Andrew?
Oh, man. So I guess maybe best bang for your buck technique or what have you for, I guess, trying to remain in that parasympathetic state, and I guess also keeping your resting heart rate down a little bit. I asked this because I think this is an issue that I have, like just kind of how I was explaining earlier, how like my body's so tense all the time. When I go to bed at night, it takes me seconds to pass out and fall asleep. I wake up feeling pretty good, and then by 10 o'clock, it's like, is it bedtime yet? Like my energy does not stay throughout the day. I'm trying to keep my caffeine intake to a minimum because I know that's like just gonna kind of just compound on itself and make the problem even bigger. Something that we spoke to Andy Triana about is, you know, if we're kind of constantly in that revved up state, our energy is going to kind of get sucked out of our bodies really quickly. Mm-hmm. And I just know for myself, looking at my resting heart rate, it's usually like in the 60s and 70s. Like it's always really, really high. And I just know I'm kind of always in...
60s and 70s is pretty good.
Is that good?
That's
okay,
good.
sorry, my bad. Okay.
That's pretty good.
But I still feel like, man, if I can just kind of relax more.
When you say that, do you mean your sleeping heart rate, or do you mean like when you're just sitting here
when
right
I'm
now?
just hanging out.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
I'm sorry, I thought that was high. My bad. But
no, it's pretty good.
Okay, well, that's great to
on
hear.
the human scale. You're doing pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome to hear.
But it sounds like, you know, I mean, I don't know what your muscle tone is like all day. I mean, some people just burn tighter. Mm-hmm. But I would say if you look at the stuff that we did today, by the way, there's 100 exercises in Body by Breath, and there's like videos and like there's ways to reinforce what you learned today.
That's exciting.
That first exercise, what I call, it's a very unfortunate name, but it's called the lumbar release what's it called? Lumbar decompression via the lateral RAF. Horrible name. It's basically, and we've renamed it a million times on different podcasts, but it's like the lumbar hammock, right? So you're making that hammock. That felt
really, really good, by the way.
It's so amazing for adjusting resting tone, but that coupled with the slow breathing, and then the other component was the move in there where we did the pelvic tuck untuck. Mm-hmm. So that very slow oscillation of the pelvis and allowing all of your spinal bones to undulate, right? Uh-huh. That for 2 to 5 minutes, I think that will really, it's going to make you drowsy a little bit, but it'll diminish just that resting tone altogether. And you might see if you use that as an intervention a few times a day, you're going to be exhausted at first. You have to keep going with your day. But I have a feeling that might be a very good global rebalancing neurologically for you, for just what your muscles are doing to you all day with their grip on you. And so it's like a little neuromyofascial breath expedition that you can introduce a few times a day. I love that. Like for me, I figured that one out during the pandemic because I was so stressed with both, I had a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old and the home computer with the school, and I was running a business and doing classes, and I literally went down on my knees crying to my husband. I was like, we've got to stop the train. It was just too much. And I figured that one out based on based on some anatomy that I'd been studying with my friend Tom Myers. So who have done, Tom Myers, the creator of Anatomy Trains. Tom and I have a program called Rolling Along the Anatomy Trains. But I was really intrigued by this one little region of the thoracolumbar aponeurosis. Anyway, when I started experimenting.
Sounds like you would say it. Like what you just, the way you spoke right there sounded exactly like him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, but anyway, I started experimenting and literally it was like one of those eureka moments. I was like, oh my God, I have just found for me the way to go back to one. That was my reset. And it used to be the gut rolling, as you know, because I mean, that's one of the things that attracted Kelly to my work. He was like, oh my God, smash your guts, you know, like, and that's one of the ways that we became fast friends is I demonstrated that for him on Mobility Wild like 12 years ago. And, but I've since discovered better and better best practices around that. And now this is my favorite best practice, but you need 2 gorgeous balls for it.
Yeah. And we'll have the video posted. Just don't get aroused as you watch us doing it.
Oh, it's very sexy. Yes. Especially, I have to say, Nsima, very well articulated through his spine and pelvis.
He's bending.
Thank you.
Got anything else, Andrew?
No, that's it for me. Yeah, I mean, I did want to talk about the restless leg syndrome.
When's your
but
flight?
I can ask you.
Let's make sure we have that.
2:30.
Yeah, so
2:30.
we got to get her going pretty soon.
Maybe another 5-10 minutes. Comfortable with that?
Maybe 3 minutes.
Okay.
You don't want me to have a panic attack?
3 to 5 minutes. We got you.
I stated my line in the sand.
We'll get you.
You don't want
We'll
to
get
see
you
me
there.
have a flight panic attack. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I did want to ask about the restless leg syndrome. My wife will kind of at time, like it's been a while, but she will get that and she'll just like be fidgety and moving a lot. And for a person that's typically not that, like she does breathe a little bit into her shoulders every now and again, but for the most part, she's calm and she's pretty chill. And then all of a sudden it's like, what's wrong? And she's just like, I can't stop moving my legs. And so I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, so those nerves are coming out of the lumbosacral plexus.
Of course.
So
That's right.
doing the same release, but then I would also roll the butt. So we did there's a move in the book called "Put Your Butt on Your Butt." No, excuse me. In the book, it's not as cute as that. I just call it the ball plow, glute plow. Excuse me. It all sounds terrible.
Babe, we're going to have to do the glute plow.
It all sounds
She's like,
terrible.
again?
So I would manipulate so because that's coming through the sciatic nerve. So you want to manipulate the glutes and just that would be some glute rolling. How's that? So the low back decompression that we did, some glute rolling, that could be helpful, but also I would do pelvic floor work. We didn't do pelvic floor work today, but in Body by Breath and Role Model, I have some pelvic floor work. It's as simple as sitting on a yoga tune-up ball, breathing and doing contract, relax. And that's all very, very helpful for the lower body. But I mean, I'd want to know if that works for her or not. Okay. But I mean, this is like months. It's not like, oh, it's just going to go away.
How long you been like deadlifting and things like that? You mentioned deadlifting helping your back and your hip.
Well, I've been lifting weights for a long time, but a serious S&C practice probably for the last 12 years. And then I introduced HIIT in the last 4 years, 4.5 years. Anyway, I got my hip replacement about 5 years ago. And then about 7 months after the hip replacement, my PT said, you need to push yourself. She said, you need to go do some HIIT. And then I found online, it was Doc Jen Fit. Her name is, she got married, it's Doc Jen Frabroni now, but it's Doc Jen Fit. Mm-hmm. And she's a physical therapist and she had this great HIIT program. And so I started to just do her videos and I was like wiped out by them. But long story short, they were the best transition for me into plyometric work because I really needed to jump. I didn't do any jump training when I was dealing with the degenerating HIIT. I avoided it. And we actually have a new program that we're releasing called Roll into HIIT. So we did a fusion of the self-myofascial release coupled with the HIIT, and it's aimed at people who are HIIT averse or afraid of HIIT. People like myself who might have had a surgery and were like, I'm never going to do something like that, but know that it's important for their health. And so the HIIT has been very helpful. In the right doses, along with strength training and along with all the other stuff that I do.
How much you bench?
I have no idea. Oh. I need you to help me. I was hoping for more hours up here so I could have you guide me through that.
What about deadlift? What's the most you deadlift?
body weight, so 115.
That's awesome.
But prior to having my hip replacement, my top PR was 135.
There you
Cool.
go.
Nice.
It's amazing. Which for a yoga overstretched person, like that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I weigh 112, so
Yeah.
come on.
That's good.
Awesome. Where can people get all your amazing stuff you got here?
All the amazing stuff. TuneUpFitness.com is my website. I have an online classroom so people can join classes. I was telling one of your fellows, I have lots of really narrow topics and also broad topics. But for example, I have an entire class just on the thumb called "Can You Handle a Thumb Class?" But there's also lots of classes. Thank you. There's also lots of classes that deconstruct the diaphragm, the zones of respiration, take you through yoga nidra, or you're like, I need some help with my hips. I have classes that cover the pelvis, the hips, the foot. There's a new class called "So You Think You Can't Jump," and a class all on the big toe. I know you're a foot guy.
Yeah.
Big toe class.
Yes, but so you can find me.
2023 is going to be about the thumb, though, I think.
We need it. I mean, the thumb arthritis from holding phones is on the rise, folks. And then I'm on Instagram at the Jill Miller. My company is at Tune Up Fitness on Instagram, or Tune Up Fitness on Instagram. And then we're on Facebook. Jill Miller and Tune Up Fitness, all that stuff. But we have about 500 teachers that train that are licensed to teach my work worldwide. So you can find people that teach Role Model or Yoga Tune Up or Body by Breath all over the world through the website.
Take us on out of here, Andrew.
Alrighty. Thank you, everybody, for checking out today's episode. Please drop those comments down below. Let us know what you guys think about today's podcast. And then also, if the video has been published where Jill took us through a class, basically, that'll be down in the description below, as well as the podcast show links, along with everything that we talked about today. So make sure you guys go check that out. Follow the podcast at MB Power Project all over the place. My Instagram is at I am Andrew Z. Nsima, where you at?
Discord's down below. Q&As are there at Nsima Inyang on Instagram and YouTube, and Nsima Inyang on TikTok and Twitter. Mark?
I'm at Mark Smelly Bell. Strength's never weakness. Weakness never strength. Catch you guys later. Bye.